All right, let's talk about the single most important engine on our entire planet. It's not made of steel, it doesn't burn fuel. Nope. We're talking about the tiny, green, biological engine that literally powers almost all life as we know it. We're talking about photosynthesis.
So let me ask you something right off the bat. Have you ever really thought about how the air you're breathing right now is connected to the food on your plate? They seem like two totally different things, right? Well, stick with me because you're about to see they are two sides of the exact same, absolutely incredible process.
Okay, so here's the core concept, the big idea. Life on Earth is solar-powered. I mean, pretty much every living thing can trace its energy all the way back to the sun. But that energy doesn't just magically become life. It has to be captured first. And the big question is, how? Well, that's exactly what we're going to dive into.
To get our heads around this, you kind of have to think of the living world as being on two different teams. On one side, you've got the autotrophs. You can think of them as the self-feeders. These are the real producers, the master chefs of the planet. Like plants, they can literally make their own food out of thin air. Well, out of things like carbon dioxide. And then there's the other team. That's us. We're the heterotrophs, the other feeders. We're the consumers. We can't make our own food, so we have to eat the producers to survive. We're completely dependent on them, not just for food, but as we're about to find out, for the very air we breathe.
So, the big mystery is, how in the world do these producers pull this off? Well, to find out, we're going to have to go on a little journey. We're going to zoom way in, from the world you and I can see with our own eyes, down into the teeny tiny microscopic machinery where all the action happens.
Our first stop is something we've all seen a million times, a simple green leaf. Now, yeah, a little bit of this process can happen in green stems, but for the most part, the leaf is the main event. It's the primary solar panel perfectly designed for this one crucial job.
Okay, let's zoom in a little tighter. If you could peel back the surface of that leaf, you'd find something called mesophyll tissue. And inside that tissue, you'd find millions and millions of individual plant cells. And believe it or not, inside just one of those tiny cells, that's where we'll find the actual factories we're looking for.
And here we are. This little guy right here, this is a chloroplast. A single plant cell can have like 30 or 40 of these things packed inside. This tiny green structure is the absolute hero of our story. Think of it as a microscopic, solar-powered factory. Its whole job is to take light energy and turn it into chemical energy, into food. This right here is where all the magic happens.
All right, so we're inside the factory. Let's take a look at the production line. You see, it's not just one thing that happens. It's more like a perfectly choreographed two-act play. So this whole process is split into two main parts. Act 1, we've got the light reactions. This is the photo part of photosynthesis. This is basically the factory's solar power station. Its job is to capture sunlight and use it to charge up these little molecular batteries. Then comes Act 2, the Kelvin cycle. This is the synthesis part. This is the assembly line, where the factory uses the power from those charged up batteries to actually build the final product, which is sugar.
Okay, so let's dig into Act 1. How does this power station actually work? I mean, how does it grab the energy from a little particle of light that has traveled millions of miles from the sun?
It really boils down to three main steps. First, absorb. The green stuff in plants, chlorophyll, grabs a photon of light, and bam! It gives its electrons a huge jolt of energy. Step 2 is split. To replace those energized electrons that just got zapped, an enzyme comes along and splits a water molecule apart. And finally, step 3, store. All that energy that was captured from the sun gets stored in two special little molecules, ATP and NADPH. You can just think of them as the factory's rechargeable batteries. And just like that, light energy has been turned into chemical energy. And this next part, this is one of the most incredible results of the whole process. So when the chloroplast splits that water molecule, it wants the hydrogen, but it has no use for the oxygen. So what does it do? It just releases it as a waste product. Yeah, that's right. The oxygen that you and I are breathing right this second is literally the exhaust fume from trillions of these tiny green engines all over the world.
Okay, so the batteries are all charged up with solar power. Now it's time to head over to the assembly line, Act 2, and see how the factory puts that energy to good use.
So you can think of the Kelvin cycle like a recipe. First step, fix. You need your main ingredient, carbon dioxide, which gets pulled out of the air by a super important enzyme called rubisco. Fun fact, that's the most abundant protein on the entire planet. Second step, reduce. Now you add the energy from those batteries we just charged, the ATP and NADPH. This is what cooks the CO2. And the third step, create. The final product you get isn't glucose just yet. It's a 3-carbon sugar called G3P. And this little sugar is the grand prize. It's the building block the plant uses to make everything else, glucose, starches, you name it.
Now, it's super important to get this. These two acts, the power station and the assembly line, are completely dependent on each other. They're not separate shows. The assembly line, the Calvin cycle, is totally useless without a constant supply of charged batteries from the power station. So, if the sun goes down and you turn off the lights, the power station shuts down, the batteries don't get charged, and the whole assembly line just grinds to a halt.
Okay, so we've been deep in the weeds, right? We've seen the microscopic details inside the factory. Now, I want you to pull back. Let's zoom all the way out and just appreciate the massive, planetary scale of what this tiny little engine is doing every single day.
The scale of this is, well, it's hard to even wrap your head around. Every single year, photosynthesis creates something like 150 times billion metric tons of carbohydrates. I mean, just try to picture that for a second. It is a staggering amount of stuff, of life, all built from nothing more than sunlight, water, and the air.
So let's put it all together. Why does this tiny engine matter so much? Well, for one, it's the ultimate source of the food that you, me, and almost every other creature eats. It is the absolute foundation of nearly every food chain on Earth. It also provides the energy and the carbon building blocks for pretty much all of life as we know it. And oh yeah, it also happens to release the oxygen that's filling your lungs right now. It connects your breath to your food in the most fundamental way possible.
And that brings us to one last really critical thought. We've just seen how this tiny, elegant green engine runs our entire planet. It feeds us. It gives us air to breathe. So the final question I want to leave you with isn't just a scientific one. It's a question for every single one of us. What happens if we turn it off?